On November 21st, 1992, Tom Monfils disappeared after a workplace dispute. A day later, his body was found in a pulp vat with a 50-pound weight wrapped around his neck. Over 30 years later, exactly who killed Monfils remains a mystery. Welcome to the Monfils 6 podcast. My name is Damon Schneider.
My name's Mike Putchell.
Today's episode is entitled Body Found. And I wanted to start off just to talk a little bit about a film called The Vanishing. Have you seen The Vanishing, Mike?
Yes, I have.
Can you explain the general plot of The Vanishing?
Sure. So I actually just watched it maybe 3 or 4 months ago, so it's still somewhat fresh in my mind. But it's an older movie, I think from 1988, a Dutch film, and it's just about a young couple, probably in their late 20s. They are on a vacation together and in Europe, and they stop at a gas station, and the woman just goes in to, I think, use the restroom, and the guy goes in to grab something to drink, and they say that they'll meet back at the car, and the guy comes back to the car, but the woman never comes back, and it's found out that she was abducted, and pretty much the rest of the movie is about the husband trying to find her, learning what happened to her, and we also have a perspective of the abductor and kind of get a look into his psyche and the way he lives. And I don't know if you want me to go into the ending. I'm not a big person to give spoilers away.
Sure, give it away this time.
Why don't you go ahead, Damon? You give the ending away.
So ultimately, the man becomes obsessed with finding who killed his wife. And he starts to go on TV, and the killer sees him on these TV appearances and offers the man a glimpse as to what happened to his wife. And they agree to meet. And the killer says, "I will tell you what happened to your wife, but you have to drink this cup of coffee first." Obviously, this is not going to end well, right? But the man is just so obsessed that he drinks the cup of coffee, and the next thing he knows is that he is enclosed in a small space, and he reaches for his pocket and pulls out a lighter and sees where he is, and he is buried in a casket underneath the ground. So that's what happened to his wife. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is that I think that there's sort of an obsession around the Tom Monfils case, at least for me, as to wanting to find out what really happened. Does this make sense to you, Mike? Or do you feel this obsession too?
It makes sense to me. I understand that you're obsessed or getting obsessed about it, but no, I don't share it personally. I mean, it's intriguing, but I'm not at that point.
I think it kind of comes back to the point when I was in that electronics class when I was 15 years old, and I heard about the case over the radio, and just something clicked that this is something I have to figure out in life. I have to figure out who killed Tom Monfils. So anyways, in this chapter, we're going to be talking about in the Monfils conspiracy. The chapter is entitled Death at the Mill, and this is basically when they find the body. So the mill in which the body had been found was noisy and dirty place. Hellish and raw, it was described as. It was full of constant noise to the point that they had to always walk around with earplugs in. Why would that might be an important point?
Well, I think it gives a good idea of just the fact that people wouldn't be hearing things going on, like somebody in case of Tom's situation, if he indeed was murdered, a struggle with somebody would not be heard. And then also, even just if he did commit suicide, um, something like that wouldn't be heard either. So it'd be really easy to miss something like that, at least from a hearing standpoint.
Yeah, if they're walking around with earplugs on, that maybe they did not hear what was happening when Monfiles was being assaulted. Perhaps the vat looked like a barn silo with its top removed. So basically, it's a two-story tissue chest, is what the proper term. And on the upper level, there's a 4-foot wall. So if you wanted to get into it, it would not be that hard because obviously it would not be that hard to traverse a 4-foot wall. And again, about 20 feet deep and about 20 feet in circumference. Now, what's going on this particular day is Monfiles is nowhere to be seen from the day before, and they're starting to get worried. Uh, they're looking everywhere to find him, but they can't. So they decided at one point, as a last ditch effort, let's drain the tissue chest. What do you think is going through the minds of the workers and the supervisors at the plant at this point when they're draining the tissue chest?
I have a feeling that I would be surprised if a lot of people thought they would find him in there, just because that would be such a weird place to find a body. But I mean, the vats were really the last place they looked for him. They had been scouring the whole place for the last 24 hours or so, trying to find the body. So even though the vats were the last place they looked, I still just have a feeling people were just shocked and surprised that he was actually in there.
Now, I wanted to bring up a point in terms of something that Tom said about Keith Kutzka, in that Tom described Keith as being a biker and dangerous. Why might that be an important point at this point in the investigation of where Tom is, in terms of what the police are thinking?
So, in reference to the whole thing with the tape that we discussed, we know that Tom said that about him in the 911 call. So, and we know the police were aware of that too. So, it kind of would point in the direction of maybe something happened between him and Keith.
Yeah, I think so. I think the police at this point are probably wondering what role is Keith playing in terms of Tom being missing. So around 8 a.m., there were unconfirmed sightings of Monfiles on the third floor of the factory. So uh, this would have been right around the time that Monfiles probably went missing if something did happen to him. One of the things that's interesting, though, that what are these unconfirmed sightings? As far as what the authors have written in this chapter, what do you think they mean by an unconfirmed sighting?
I think it just means that somebody said that they saw him, but they didn't corroborate it with anybody else, and uh, it's probably likely that it wasn't him. It may have just been someone they saw from the back. It looked like him from the back. It probably wasn't him.
That's an interesting point that you brought up, especially if the sighting of the person who spotted Tom was on the first floor. Maybe that from that distance, it would have been hard to tell who it really was at that point. Now, it's important to remember that this is taking place sort of in late November. This is right as gun deer season in Wisconsin is sort of taking off. And we kind of alluded to in a previous episode going up north and hunting and how that was sort of a really popular thing. So the James River Mill on this particular day has sort of a skeleton crew. Why might that be important in terms of Tom being going missing on this particular day?
Well, it definitely narrows down the pool of people that could have possibly hurt him. Uh, and in some ways, it's helpful too from an investigation standpoint that police have less people to talk to for looking into what happened to him.
Yeah, indeed. And there'd be less people in the plant on the particular day that Tom went missing, that less people to see what happened, to see an altercation take place. Memento mori. Remember, you must die someday. So, Mike, we've been talking all for the last 7 episodes about our seasons of life business. Can you talk a little bit about uh, the gravesite and watching videos at the gravesite?
Sure. So again, this is probably the most unique aspect about the business, Seasons of Life Memorials, where again we create videos for somebody who passed on in a way that really we aren't seeing done anywhere else. And again, the main way that people view these videos is that at the scene of the gravesite, a QR code can be placed and scanned by the phone, and you can watch the video right there at the gravesite. And one of the neat things too about the idea is that, of course, people who are familiar with the deceased would be able to view the video, but again, somebody could be going through a cemetery visiting some of their own family members, friends, and then just see the QR code of somebody, the gravesite they're just passing by, and they could watch it as well. And again, it just kind of gives a way to give a more full story to the life that somebody lived, where it's not just the birth date and the death date and the name. It really gives a fuller picture of who this person was that you're seeing their name on their tombstone for.
And we're back. I wanted to point out, too, that to our loyal listeners, that we might sound a little bit different today because we are actually in a different studio. We are working with MediaPodsmash.com. They're gracious enough to share their studio space and let us use their mics. And so that's why we might sound just a little bit different today. Now, one of the things that the book points out also in this chapter was Sue and Tom had an account at the James River Credit Union that contained about $3,000. So again, this is 1992, $3,000. I just want to mention that now I want to come back in later episodes as I sort of unfold my overarch of what I think really happened to Monfils that day. And that $3,000 in that bank account is going to play an important role. So just kind of remember that at that point. So when the body had been found without verifying the identity, Sue was at the police station and she sort of broke down, and she even asked for a priest to come, and she asked to be taken to a mental health facility. What does that tell you about sort of how Sue Monfils' mindset at that point?
Well, it sounds like it was complete devastation to me, complete shock, and I really don't have a whole lot more to say about it, only because I have no idea what that's like.
Yeah, it sort of gets to the heart of that this was a real person who realized that her kids are going to grow up without a father at this point, and that was just sort of devastating for her. Because of its obscure location in the mill, many workers had never even seen the tissue chest or known uh, about where it was located. Why might that be an important aspect to Monfils going missing on that day?
Well, I think that's similar to the fact that there weren't as many people working there. It would kind of show that, I mean, if somebody doesn't even know of the location where he was found, then they couldn't possibly have been involved in throwing his body in there if they don't even know where it was. I think that would be the main thing. Do you have another reason?
I think it narrows down who could have done it for sure. It narrows down that possibility because a lot of the people. It also kind of shoots a hole in sort of the DA's argument that this all happened in a very quick time frame. Because if most of the employees aren't even aware where these tissue chests are, how is it that they were able to formulate this plan so quickly in a matter of minutes, literally, that they were able to figure out that they would stash the body in the tissue chest. The police they arrive around 9 p.m. At on Sunday when the body was found, and the police were told that the tank area was quote unquote not a work area. What do you think is meant by that?
To me, it means that there's really no reason that anybody should be over there.
Yeah, exactly. Why would if this was not a work area, why would we even be checking these tissue chests? Because no one ever goes back there anyways. The police were told then that Monfils' workstation was about 50 yards from the pulp vat. So 50 yards is half a football field. That's not. That's. I mean, in regards to Monfils getting to the vat in a short amount of time, that's possible that he could have ran up there in just a short amount of time and done something possibly to himself. What do you think about in terms of that aspect, Mike?
As far as the 50 yards?
Yeah, the 50-yard location from
Yeah.
Monfils' workstation.
Yeah, I think that certainly doesn't rule out anything. He could have probably easily have gotten to that. And I would imagine too, with it being a paper mill, I doubt it was like a straight shot um, to the vat. It was probably, through meandering hallways, or not hallways necessarily, but just go around all this equipment, go around this little room. I doubt it was just like a straight direct way.
So they start to empty the tissue chest, and there's a problem in that the pulp is not coming out as quickly as they anticipate. So it appears that something maybe is jammed in there. And I want to point out too at this point that there's an agitator blade at the bottom of the tissue chest. Now, according to the documentary Beyond Human Nature, one of the engineers on the plant is actually uh, on record in terms of the interview in the film that the agitator blade would have caused the body to be sucked into the blade, which is kind of interesting because when I saw the film at the Milwaukee Film Fest, Detective Winkler actually was there and they did a Q&A afterwards. And I remember one of the things that Winkler distinctly said is the agitator blade, according to him, he made a motion with his fingers, would have pushed the body away from the blade. Actually, it would have pushed it away from it. What does that say to you about Winkler and sort of his methods of detective work?
Well, I don't know about that comment. I mean, I'm not an expert on the propeller blades, but just a little sidebar. Weren't people, and I know it's a movie, but it was based on a real thing. Weren't people sucked into the propeller blades in Titanic?
I, James Cameron's Titanic.
Yeah. Well, and probably in the real story, the real event.
Yeah, I remember that happening. Yeah. So possibly it's just an interesting contradiction that the film that I just watched, there is someone on camera, an engineer from the plant, who said that the body would have been sucked into the blade, and then right afterwards in the Q&A, Winkler directly contradicts that and said that the blade would have pushed the body away from it. And I think that kind of speaks to Winkler and his detective methods and basically being the sort of person who will say anything to to solve the case in his favor, basically.
And do we know if Detective Winkler spoke to that same engineer when he investigated initially?
No, I would have no idea about that.
Yeah.
But you would think that he probably would have done
right.
that. Yeah,
You'd hope too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to bring up too is I got to the film. It was raining that day, and I got there a little early because I was waiting for my friend who had my ticket, and so I was waiting right outside. And there was a guy right next to me who I figured was the director and was waiting to let people in. And so Winkler actually, I was almost face to face with Winkler at that time. And it was interesting because he appeared sort of to me as his appearance was sort of disheveled. And in the film, his appearance is very pristine. Did you remember that in terms of the film, of the way he was presented?
I remember one of the times we saw him, didn't he have a really large beard? Or a pretty heavy beard?
Yeah.
Was that in the film?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's what I remember. I mean, what did he look like when you saw him? Did he still have a beard, or?
He almost, to me, in some respects, looked like he was homeless.
Okay.
And so he's showing up to this film premiere in which he's featured, and he's, it didn't appear that he had even bothered to comb his hair.
Yeah, well, I know and maybe we'll get into this later because I know the book talks about Winkler pretty heavily later, but he's known for having quite a few different appearances.
Yeah, at one point he straight up starts to try to dress like a detective from the 40s, I think, is what the book says. So the body itself was found face down, floating face down. Why might that be important?
Well, I'll add too, I don't know if I'm following why that would be important, but I'll add that it had moved around quite a bit, because remember, one of the 3 people that had found him, when they looked over the wall, one of the employees, they saw his body turn over. Do you remember that?
Yeah. The reason I put that down as an important point, face down, is the fact that it might suggest that Tom jumped face down into first, and that's why he was found that way.
Mm-hmm.
So coroner Jeannie Williams joined the police officers, and she began recording, quote unquote, red-brown discoloration around the body. So Jeannie ultimately is the person that would rule this a homicide. What do you think about her note as far as the red-brown color discoloration around the body?
Well, to me, that sounded like the mixture of blood and the pulp. Is that what you're taking it as?
Yeah, the blood mixing with the pulp, yeah, producing the red and the brown colors.
So my take is that, I mean, his body was clearly hit multiple times by the blades, and so I'm imagining his body not looking good at all after they took it out of there.
That's a good point too. If Monfils is pushed into the vat, he must have a head wound prior to that, according to Winkler, because otherwise, why would he be bleeding? Does that make sense?
No, can you say that again?
So if Monfils is pushed into the pulp vat, and the blade pushes him away from itself, then he's not been hit by the blade, according to it.
Sure.
So why would there be blood? The only way there would be blood if he had a head wound before he'd been pushed into the vat itself.
Right. I see what you're saying.
So Williams also noted a boot and some body material, which upon inspection appears to be skin with some underlying muscle attached, has been taken from a trap surrounding the pump. The reason I bring that up is what I mentioned a few moments ago when they first started to drain the vat itself, that there was a problem with something appeared to be stuck. And so, kind of what I wanted to suggest is that as all this pulp is leaving, is being poured out, perhaps the body is being moved around. It's not in its location as where it had been stuck.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'll just add that, I mean, to me, that comment she made is what makes it really gruesome. I mean, this just sounds like a horrible thing to discover for the employees and the law enforcement later on, and horrible to have to get it out of there, to get his body out of there. That sounds awful.
Williams also noted that the agitator was measured 48 inches in diameter and consisted of 3 blades, each 20 inches wide and 3/8 of an inch thick. Williams noted that the body was, quote, to the west of the propeller, but in the area of it. Why is the 3/8 thickness important?
That was later determined that was the same dimensions of the major head wound on Tom's body.
All right, so yeah, Monfils had a head wound with a 3/8 inch bash into it, and according to again to Winkler, who was at the film when he was discussing the case afterwards, he was directly asked about the murder weapon, if the murder weapon had ever been retrieved, and he specifically said, "No, we think it was some sort of wrench, but there is a murder weapon was not retrieved." What do you think that says about the possibility that these 6 men participated in this murder? The fact that they didn't find a murder weapon.
Well, I think the bigger thing is that, to me, that shows that full investigation wasn't done. You know, I think that would be the number one thing, I would think, would be to take that blade and really compare it to those wounds, and that wasn't really done. So to me, that's the big thing, is that the detectives didn't fully look into this, all the possibilities, and as far as the weapon not being found, that really weakens the case even more as far as convicting everybody.
New episodes of the Monfils 6 podcast drop every other Friday. And thank you for listening.
What's remembered lives. Losing someone precious from our lives is the most painful event that one can endure. Seasons of Life Memorials is dedicated to making sure the person you lost is never forgotten. We work with you to help you craft a film about your loved one's life that can be viewed at the gravesite. We can also help you create a film about your very own life that can be viewed in the obituary section of your hometown newspaper. Imagine that, your friends, relatives, and neighbors viewing your own unique story and how your life truly did matter. Visit our website, seasonsoflifememorials.com, and follow us on social media today to start viewing what we can do for you.